Hi, everybody. This is Pastor Susan, coming to you as the Interfaith Pastor. And I wanted to talk today about the gospel reading that we just had this past Sunday, which was the Beatitudes. Now, many people, even if they're not Christian, might know the Beatitudes or have some idea of what they might be. They're the blessed R's, right? Blessed are the poor or the poor in spirit, depending which gospel you're reading. The meek, blessed be those who mourn, blessed are the peacemakers, and so on and so forth. So this week's reading was from the Matthew gospel, and Matthew has the Beatitudes coming right at the beginning of Jesus's ministry. And it's the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, what in Matthew is called the Sermon on the Mount. So he's got a bunch of chapters with teachings of Jesus. And it all starts out with these Beatitudes. And so I was curious. I was curious about the Beatitudes, that does anything like them appear in other religions? I was just curious. Wondering, because, the golden rule is, and you may be familiar with this poster, that the golden rule appears in, different wording and everything, but the idea is the same in many, many, many of the major world's religions. And in fact, there's a wonderful website where you can purchase the poster, but they also have amazing other resources, curriculum, all kinds of information, study guides, and it's just a wonderful resource. I'll give you the link later. But anyway, I was thinking, is there anything similar for the Beatitudes? So of course, what do you do when you want to know something, right? You Google it, the Beatitudes in the world's religions. And I did actually find I found one resource. I'm going to try to pull that up for you in a second here. But anyway, it is Strangers on the Shore. It's a book called The Strangers on the Shore, the Beatitudes and other world's religions. Hopefully this will work. There it is. So I actually had to go up to the GTU, the Graduate Theological Union here in Berkeley, had to go up to the library to get it. Fascinating. And indeed, there are many, many, many similarities in other sacred writings that express the same kinds of things that are in the Beatitudes. So the writings that this author uses to compare the teachings of the Beatitudes, he uses the Tanakh, or the Hebrew Bible, and he uses the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita for Hinduism. And for Buddhism, he used a number of writings. He used the Buddha's sermon, his first sermon in Deer Park in India, and also some of his writings like the Eightfold Path and so on. So he works a lot with those texts. And so as I was reading this and thinking about how do the Beatitudes contrast, and it was quite interesting to see how a lot of the and often we don't know what to call it. The Beatitudes, are these ethics? Are these commandments? Are these rules? Let me pull up another thing here. You may have seen this meme that came out recently. Kurt Vonnegut quote: "For some reason, the most vocal Christians among us never mention the Beatitudes, but often with tears in their eyes, they demand that the 10 Commandments be posted in public buildings." And of course, that's Moses, not Jesus. "I haven't heard one of them demand that the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, be posted anywhere. Blessed are the merciful in a courtroom. Blessed are the peacemakers in the Pentagon. Give me a break." Sounds very Kurt Vonnegut. And but it's a reminder that the Beatitudes are not necessarily they're not commandments. They're not rules. It's not really the same as the 10 commandments. It might be better to use the golden rule with that. And then there's only one, right? Do unto others. Jesus said, right? These are the greatest commandment. Anyway, what do we do with these? What does it say? How do we think about Beatitudes? So as Christians, for Christians, this is what Jesus is teaching. This is the very, very, very first thing that he wants his hearers to know. Now, part of it is the poor in spirit, the hungry, those who are grieving, those who are persecuted. Those were already there. People were already experiencing these things. So the blesseds are a recognition or an honoring of the situation that people already were in. But they also have wisdom for us today as well. And of course, when we read them, oftentimes we read them and think these are impossible. They're impossible. Well, a lot of the teachings of Jesus seem like they're impossible. But Jesus, here's the thing about the teachings of Jesus. What is Jesus always on about? In the parables, in teachings, all the time, what Jesus is talking about is the kingdom of God. Now, in recent days, there are many of us who have wanted to do away with some of the male language and also the hierarchical language. So kingdom has been being used as kingdom, which gives a different idea, right? That we live in the kingdom of God. So that's what I'll use. That's what I'll use here. But this is what Jesus is always on about. And the thing is, he's not always super clear. The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. The kingdom of God is like a pearl. The kingdom of God is like this. It's like a woman making bread. Like, Jesus, could you be a little more clear here? What exactly is it? But in the Beatitudes, we have a pretty clear idea of the values, the ethics, the whatever you want to call them, the characteristics of the kingdom of God. And they're quite upside down from the usual values of the world, right? Being meek, being peaceful, all of those things. So anyway, looking at I think this book would be a great study guide actually to read in an interfaith group, and just to go through and each group maybe do more commentary or elucidation on the sections that talk about those characteristics in their sacred texts. But the reality is that, it's there. It's there. Those values, those characteristics are there in all of these different religions. So it's kind of fun to look at that. I hope maybe someday there'll be a poster or a curriculum like the Golden Rule people did. But until then, it's kind of cool to read some of these texts and think, is this just a Jesus thing? Is this just a Christian thing? And then we find out that, we have a whole lot in common. We're not all the same, of course. We have disagreements. We have things we don't agree on. But in a lot of these values, we are definitely on the same page. And blessed are we, blessed are those who, or as Jesus would say, those who have ears to hear, listen. So that's it for today. Blessed are you. Bye-bye.